Thank you for your patience, everyone, and I will now call this meeting to order. Ms. Ramirez, can you confirm a quorum?
Yes, ma'am, we have yourself, Trustee Steen, and Trustee Gonzalez. We have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. I will now ask Ms. Jean Drays to lead us in the safety message, invocation, and pledge of allegiance.
Okay. If you hear the fire alarm, follow the instructions announced through the PA system. If asked to evacuate, use the glass door exiting out of the boardroom to the outside. If that door is blocked, use the back door. Verbally alert others in the room and evacuate. Then move to the main parking lot in front of the building or the AT&T parking lot over the McCullough-Brooklyn bridges. In the event of a situation like this, our security team will be monitoring the situation and will notify the appropriate emergency services and team members. We also have employees nearby who are trained to administer first aid if needed. Safety is a top priority at CPS Energy, and while we hope this information is never needed, we want to be sure that we are always ready. Will you please stand with me for the invocation? We thank you for the many blessings you have freely given to each of us. We ask for your presence to guide this meeting of the CPS Energy Board of Trustees. Provide them with the knowledge, compassion, and wise counsel needed as they discuss the business matters on the agenda today. Help us all to remember that we are stewards acting on behalf of our customers and provide us with the grace to serve all people well. We ask this in your name. Amen. Now please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge the allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Drays. And now Heather Gomez will lead us into public comment.
Public comment provides an opportunity for members of the public to share thoughts on posted agenda items for this meeting. We will invite pre-registered speakers to speak. They may only address the board on CPS Energy-related business listed on the posted agenda. Speakers should state their first and last name, their organization or group they represent, and the agenda item they will speak about. For this meeting, we have one in-person speaker. Each speaker will have 2 minutes to speak. Thomas, will you please cue the timer? Our first speaker is Henrietta LaGrange.
Good afternoon, CPS workers. You know that I'm very excited. I brought my pom-poms to welcome Ms. Dr. Romero as our chairman. And I was going to say, Ms. Gonzalez, black looks good on you. And one thing I might want to say is, John Steen, he said he quoted me that it's good sometimes to stand alone, but you can stand alone if you're right. And just a little word of encouragement for anybody around here. Don't ever argue with me because I'm always right. I love being here, and it's just exciting. And I'm glad, Mr. Steen, that you recognize my intelligence because it's there. And I love San Antonio, and I love each and every one of you. And what am I going to say? Because I'm out there, and I stop at every construction site, and I see the precision of the workers, and I ask, what drives you? She says, the success of CPS and the success of Rudy Garza. I don't know what you do, Rudy, but it's contagious. People love you out there. I can't figure it out because I want to be in your place. I want to be everybody like me, but it's not easy, okay? I almost got beat up trying to get a parking space. But each and every one of you, I don't know your name, but if you're a CPS employee, I love you, I respect you, and I know it's not easy you all being here because it's hard work. But let me say, I forgot to introduce myself. It's Henrietta LaGrange, Indian name Fearless Feather. I belong to LULAC, Raza Unida, and growing up brown. And I love myself. Thank you.
Thank you for your input. I will now turn the meeting back to Chair Romero.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. LaGrange. All right, well, for Chair's remarks, I just had a few comments I wanted to make on a personal note. I want to thank my fellow trustees for trusting me in this position. We may not always agree. In fact, I think it is healthy that we don't always agree, but I've learned a lot from each of you, and I know we are united in our Vision 2027 and Horizon 2050 plans going forward. I will ask everyone's patience as I start and get used to this routine. I want to recognize folks watching our live stream, either right now live or later on, as I really welcome greater public engagement in what we do. And my goal is simply to continue our tradition of conducting these board meetings in an atmosphere of efficiency, transparency, and respect for fellow board members, CPS employees, our customers, and anyone else who appears before us. So let's get started. First, I want to mention today that CPS Energy is celebrating Black History Month. And of course, that celebrates the rich history, culture, and contribution of African Americans. The annual observance provides an opportunity for CPS Energy to highlight team members. Each year, team members are featured to showcase their roles within the company, and this also helps others at CPS Energy recognize future career options within our utility. This marks the second year Vice Chair Dr. Mackey, who is running late today because of a personal emergency, has hosted a Black History Month luncheon. This year's event took place last Friday, February 21st, and was a partnership with CPS Energy members of the American Association of Blacks in Energy Alamo Region Chapter. The keynote speaker was Reggie Williams, a Vietnam War veteran and former CEO of the San Antonio Area Foundation. So thank you, Dr. Mackey, in your absence, and we have a short video to play highlighting the impact of this event.
Hi, I'm Brandy Russell, Program Project Lead in Corporate Responsibility. I also have the distinct honor of being the president of the Alamo Region American Association of Blacks in Energy. This year, we're celebrating Black History Month in partnership with CPS Energy. Dr. Mackey has asked that AID produce a Black History Month program here at the office. We're reminded that it's important for people to see themselves reflected in different types of roles across the energy sector. As an employee of CPS Energy, it makes me so proud to know that my company is not only holding space for my personal experiences, but for those of my community members.
Thank you. I am now turning it over to our CEO, Mr. Rudy Garza.
Thank you, Chair Dr. Romero and trustees. So today I'm going to do a couple of things. We're going to start off with our monthly recognition, and you know we generally tend to recognize the big groups, the award winners, the linemen, the gas workers, customer facing organizations. Today we're going to be recognizing a smaller but mighty team, our occupational health team. So this small but mighty team consists of 4 registered nurses who support the organization by delivering health and safety services to 3,600 employees throughout the company. They focus on promoting and restoring health, preventing illness and injury, and protecting employees against work-related environmental hazards. They provide case management, crisis intervention, health promotion, and injury assessments that address both work-related and non-work-related issues. So to highlight some of the achievements of this part of the organization, 3 of our 4 nurses have earned board certifications in occupational health nursing. CPS Energy was a recent recipient of the Employer Recognition Award from the American Association of Occupational Health Nurses in 2024. We've also been recognized, recently announced that CPS Energy was a recipient of the Employer Recognition Award from the American Board of Occupational Health Nurses. The awards selection committee highlighted the time, energy, and resources that CPS Energy dedicates to occupational health nurses contributions, as well as the value placed on credentialing, are second to none. So our occupational health team is an integral part of our focus on safety, and we are grateful for the work they do every day to keep us healthy. Please join me in thanking our occupational health team for the wonderful work they do and keep our employees healthy. So the second part of my comments today are really teeing up what we have on the agenda for today that Dr. Romero has asked me to add to my report as we move forward. So what I'm going to do is each month I'm going to provide just a high-level overview of the agenda that's before the trustees for consideration. Today we started a little later as a result of the reception we have at 5 o'clock. Just to kill the time gap that might be in between. But we've got a number of procurement items. All of these are really bread and butter items from materials that support our resiliency of our system, reclosures. We've been adding reclosures to our system for a good 5 years now. They allow us to isolate the outages as they happen and move power around our system more efficiently. We've got an item for what we call our cable terminations, when you have to connect underground cable to transformers or or meters and things of that nature. That's an important item that we have today. Again, this is all just meat and potatoes stuff for our business. We've got funding for both distribution planning, engineering, and transmission planning and operations engineering that are all supplemental to the work that we do to serve a growing system. And finally, we've got the third leg of our ERP transformation item, the independent verification and validation services, IV&V. This will allow us to ensure that accountability in our overall program is maintained and we're doing the things that we committed to doing. Again, this is the last of the three contracts that we need to effectively get our ERP program going, and I look forward to the discussion around these items. We've also got two other items on the agenda. An update to our Vision 2027 generation plan. We are presenting this same information to the MUC at their request tomorrow, so we thought it was appropriate for the board to see the information first. And then Dr. Romero will lay out her board committee assignments to end the meeting today. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Dr. Romero.
All right, thank you. Okay, so our first item is the consent agenda, item 6A, payment to the City of San Antonio for January 2025, an additional transfer to the City of San Antonio for fiscal year 2025, and 6B, minutes from the January regular board meeting held on January 31st, 2025. Any questions or comments from the board? And do we have a motion to approve the items on the consent agenda? All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All right, that moves us to regular agenda. Item 7 is the board committee reports. We have the Audit and Finance Committee meeting held on January 9th, 2025, and the Employee Benefits Oversight Committee meeting held on January 13th, 2025. Do any board members have any discussion or questions on these? Okay, and they are accepted as presented in our board packet. All right, item 8, Gets us to our procurement items. So 8 is procurement request for approval, 15 kV and 38 kV reclosers with Mr. Richard Medina.
Hi, good afternoon. So the first procurement item is for, like Rudy mentioned, the reclosers, both 15 and 38 kV. Those are the two different voltages on our distribution system. And so these are the electronic switches. There's the picture there on the right. They go on the poles and they isolate the circuits. So we have maybe 2 or 3 of them per circuit, and then they're tied between circuits so that we can move power around as necessary, especially when there's outages and storms. So they're super important for reliability, resiliency, and you can see the 2 icons on the bottom there. Covers the resiliency and reliability of the grid, and it also supports system growth. In addition, we're also using this type of deployment to automate some of this stuff with our grant that we received from the DOE. On this slide is just showing the current contract was valued at $29 million for 4 years. It expires February of '25. The new contract is for $30 million for 5 years, and we are awarding that to 3 awardees. 3 of them are local and 2 of them are small business. And that concludes the presentation. I'll ask if there's any questions. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Why was this $30 million contract awarded to 3 vendors, $10 million each?
So that when we,
Or why are you proposing that we award it? Yeah.
because there's 3 different vendors that supply these materials. So we're going through just making sure that we have adequate supply from various vendors, along with that we're getting good bids from each vendor.
All right. And I won't name the company, but you know, you score these companies, and
Yes, sir.
and I don't. Is that available to the public? How we score it and all of that? This is.
Yes, the full packets in your board books have been posted.
Well, I'm not gonna. I'm looking at the 3, and were these the top 3 scores?
Yes, sir.
And why was a company that scored a 69 included in the group of awardee people or firms that you're suggesting we award this contract to?
Yes, so the criteria there on your page there, we look at the criteria, and nobody usually gets 100. So we talked about this at previous board meetings. We'll score companies based on the information they're providing. It doesn't necessarily mean that a lower score is just a bad company. And so we are looking at experience, we look at their financials, we look at their past performance and history around these products. And they are pretty much a middleman between the manufacturers.
You're right, and I'm looking at the evaluation criteria. So it's 50 points overall cost, which is good. Experience, warranty, quality control, and contingencies, 30. The ability to meet CPS Energy's requirements, 10. And economic development, local and small consideration, 10.
Yes, sir.
You know, you have to take away a lot of points to get, to get below 70.
Not necessarily. It depends on the information, how they provide it.
Again,
Gonzalez?
yeah, I'm sorry. It's just because I have procurement experience in responding to proposals. So typically, and again, I can't see it and bring my reading glasses, but it's percentage. So for example, it's usually broken up into 3 phases. There's the technical part, there's the management approach, and then there's the costing approach. And each of those sections typically have a percentage. Was this the case here?
Yes.
Okay. So when they get a 70, for example, that means that could be, they're weighted differently also.
They're all weighted
So
different.
sometimes it'll say for management, you're gonna get 20% score. For cost proposal, it may be 50%. So each thing is weighted differently, not like one, and it usually sometimes equals to a balance, and sometimes you're just looking at each of those individually. So sometimes a proposal could be awarded on, we're gonna weigh costs more, even though you're qualified, we want the cheapest. Sometimes we can say you're qualified and we don't want the cheapest. So am I understanding that that's our process?
That is correct.
Okay, and also this process is again based on meeting the criteria per category. Again, management, cost, technical proposal, each are weighted to a percentage. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And then depending again on the complexity of the, again, resilience, these are the scores we have here. You might weigh it differently based on, again, the objective that the department is trying to reach.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
that a shorter supply, for example,
Yep.
a unique person only offers this. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And we are also awarding to multiple vendors just because of the diversity and making sure that we can get supply.
Well, not just that, but, we've been intentionally moving to multiple vendors to, in case one vendor performs, that gives us flexibility, to not have to come back to the board and go to a different vendor who's capable. Our procurement policy doesn't create a cut line that says everything under 70, points is bad. Our team has to identify who can do it and who can't, and then, kind of, rank them based on capability accordingly. But there's nothing in our process that creates a cut line. It's not like an A, B, or C, or D grade. Some are stronger, as Trustee Gonzalez said, in other areas, but they're all, the ones we're bringing to you every board meeting are capable based on the process that we go through, with our experts internally to get there. So, yeah. Well, procurement and technical experts in that field.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So you mentioned the word diversity, did you not?
Just between contractors. Make multiple contractors to make sure that we're
This
getting
is not
the-
DEI. What they're saying is, and let's be clear,
Okay,
it's not DEI.
can we just hold on a minute and just go with the questions here? And Richard, can you just answer the question? Thank you.
Yes, I misspoke. It was really multiple vendors to ensure that we can get the supply that we need.
And I don't want to belabor this, and I'm not going to, but I have to draw the line somewhere, and I think most people understanding you're grading on 100, and
It's not grading on 100. I mean, there's 100% max score, but nobody ever gets 100 on any of this occasion. Every once in a while, but it's rare.
I think most people
And it
would-
depends on
yeah.
the information they're providing.
But most people looking at it would say you're scoring people 100. You're recommending somebody today that they got a 69.
That's not accurate.
But I don't want to belabor it. But I don't want to. I don't understand why we need 3 awardees. But I don't really want to vote for somebody that got a 69. So.
Richard,
Yes, ma'am.
I know we ask you a lot of questions about this. For all of these today, for example, the evaluation criteria for each one is a little bit different. So can you explain how that works? Is that just set ahead of time, that there's policies that when we have evaluation criteria for this piece of equipment, it looks like this?
Yes, since this is a contract that we're buying equipment, the variables will change. And so we're weighting it more on cost since it's a device that's it's approved, and we have making sure that these devices, we've been using them for years already, like Rudy mentioned, and we have experience with them. So we're speccing out those devices and buying what we need. And then now these vendors represent manufacturers, and we're trying to make sure that they get enough slots and that we get the materials that we need on a timely manner.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Ramirez, I have a question for you. There are just 3 of us here. It is a quorum. Can you confirm how many votes we need for an item to pass?
2 out of 3.
2 out of 3? Yes. Okay, thank you. All right, do we have a motion on this item? Do we have a second? I will second. Can we have our vote, please, Ms. Ramirez?
Trustee Steen?
No.
Trustee Gonzalez? Chair?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. Item 9, procurement request for approval, installation of underground residential electric distribution and electric cable terminations. Mr. Richard Medina.
All right. So next contract is, it's a long-winded title there, but it's basically for all the craft work for the electric cable system. So we have contractors that will go trench and dig and put conduits in the system. And then another contractor will come back and pull cable, do all the craft work, making sure and energizing these subdivisions and apartment infrastructure. This is mainly for new construction. And then they also have, within the contract, the ability to help if there's extreme weather conditions and we need additional resources, we can also pull in these contractors. This also supports resiliency and reliability, and also this is directly tied to growth of our system. So this contract is valued, the current contract was $18 million for 3 years, and the new contract is $24 million for 3 years. We are awarding this to 3 vendors. 3 of them are local and 2 small business. So I'll see if there's any questions on this one.
All right, do we have a motion on this item?
Motion to approve the item.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any more discussion? All right, Ms. Ramirez, please proceed with the vote.
Trustee Steen?
Yes.
Trustee Gonzalez?
Yes.
Chair?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, item 10, procurement request for approval, engineering services for electric distribution planning.
Okay, so the next 2 are engineering contracts, so that they're a little different. The first one is for distribution. So when we talk about distribution, it's really from the substations and below, feeding the residential and commercial areas. And so this contract is for engineering services. Primarily what they're doing is looking at whenever a customer comes in and they're asking for, hey, I need to interconnect with your system and add distributive energy resources or generators behind the meter, and they want to connect to the system and also push power back. We're also working with them on that. So we have to do intense studies, and so those studies, we're supplementing our engineering resources with external folks. Resources. This also supports distribution automation, so we have to do a lot of analysis on the distribution systems on how the power flows are going to move across the system, along with all the settings that go inside breakers and reclosers, and making sure that the system performs adequately. This also, on the bottom 3 icons, you can see it supports grid modernization, growth, and resiliency and reliability. So the difference on this contract is we are adding additional funds. This contract was a new contract. We didn't have one like this before. It was approved by the board in April of '24. We just started getting a lot of requests, and we're burning through these contracts, so we're trying to add additional funds of $7.5 million.
Any questions on this one?
I do. May I ask a question, Madam Chair?
Yep.
So I just want to be mindful. So when we say grid modernization, was this part of already in an earlier budget we approved? Is that part of 2027?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. And then again, because I'm really big on making sure that I don't say no to something when there's an urgency. So 1, it was part of 2027.
Yes.
2, this is about, again, resiliency. So by not doing this, it could affect, again, if we have a severe storm, if regular weather, anything, this affects resiliency and reliability. And then this is about, again, meeting capacity. Is that a fair statement?
That is correct.
And then again, this was already a budget item.
Yes. And part of, okay.
You've
yes.
answered my questions. I kind of go
Thank you.
back to, I'm going to keep going to the icons because I think the icons are important. Not to say that we shouldn't scrutinize the budget and why we're making these decisions. I just, again, have to be mindful that this is like my moral compass
Okay.
of, hey, when Richard comes up here, by us not supporting something or maybe partially supporting something, that this is the impact it will have in these 3 items. Again, it was discussed. It has been discussed as part of our budget. Number 2, it's again capacity, meeting growth in the state of San Antonio, Bexar County. And then 3, might affect our ability to be resilient in whatever energy mix we're using. So thank you for answering my questions. Those are my only questions, Madam Chair.
So how many are you recommending for this one?
It's the same 5 contractors. We're just adding funds to the contract.
These are ones that we're already dealing with?
Yes, sir.
But I'll move approval.
Do we have a second?
Sorry about that. Yes. Okay, partially here, so sorry.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Ms. Ramirez, please proceed with the vote.
Trustee Steen?
Yes.
Trustee Gonzalez?
Yes.
Chair?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, item 11, procurement request for approval, engineering services for transmission planning and operations engineering.
All right, so this is the last one of mine. This one is for transmission studies. So the first one was for distribution at the distribution level. This one is really tied to all the transmission connections. So we do a lot of studies just, with the growth of our system here in San Antonio and the Bexar County area. So every time whether there's a large solar farm, a battery trying to connect to our transmission systems, large loads, or ERCOT puts out new studies, we utilize both internal and external resources to perform a lot of different types of studies and making sure that the grid is reliable and meets all the compliance requirements. So again, this one was a brand new contract for us, so we initially estimated it at $3 million. Because of all the activity with ERCOT and working with our systems, we're just kind of burning through this contract also, so we're trying to add $6 million to the existing $3 million contract. And then we're keeping the same awardees. There's 3 contractors that we're awarding to. And of course, this one supports system growth. The 2 icons on the bottom is really the transmission system growth and making sure that it's reliable and resilient as we change some of our generation portfolio. And it follows the Vision 27 and the resource plan that was previously approved.
All right, any questions?
So maybe what would clarify is, again, happen to be familiar with terms, maybe the word should be is like we have an existing contract and we're requesting a modification, like an additional purchase order. Is that really what we're doing? Like it's already an existing?
It's an existing contract. That
Right, so you really want a mod to add more money to it?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so I think again, for those of us who don't have that experience, I might have clarified my colleague's question earlier. It's already an existing contract, and all we're asking, you're coming before us not to change vendors, not to change payment terms, but just to modify. You're adding more funding, and you want approval for an additional purchase order modification.
That is correct, and we can make that on the.
Yeah, and then just make sure it's not changing the period of performance.
No.
Okay, so those are, I think it's important. It's just terminology, and I think that would really, really help for those of us who sometimes understand it, and some of us may not have that experience.
Yeah, and I would just add, in the time to, to go back out to test the market would be when the contract ends in 2027.
Mr. Steen, any questions? All right, do we have a motion on item 11?
Motion to approve the recommended PL funding increase for engineering services for electric transmission planning.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? All right, Ms. Ramirez?
Trustee Steen?
Yes.
Trustee Gonzalez?
Yes.
Chair?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We are actually going to put off item 12. Trustee Steen needs to recuse on it, and we will not have a quorum. So we are holding it until Dr. Mackey arrives. What item is this? Item 12. So then we will hear from Mr. Benny Etheridge for item 13, which is our Vision 2027 Generation Plan Update.
Okay, good afternoon, Chair and Trustees. We prepared a brief presentation for you to talk a little bit about our Vision 2027 Generation Plan progress. I'll start out with just a quick overview of our market landscape. We'll talk about the past. We'll take a look back at our generation planning process. We'll talk about progress and accomplishments, excuse me, going forward. You know, as you look at our ERCOT market today, you see that we're experiencing significant growth. For our forecasting, we've moved from 115 megawatts a year 3 years ago to over 160 megawatts a year today. ERCOT just released their capacity, demand, and resources reserves report, and they're forecasting a potential 6.2% shortfall as early as next year. Now that's potential, but it's out there. We're seeing a lot of growth, not only from typical customer growth, but also large load customers moving into the area, as you all know. And so we're dealing with a fair amount of uncertainty, and we've got some challenges. We got ahead of this back in 2022 at your direction. When we pulled together our community members, we worked with the Rate Advisory Committee led by Reed Williams, and we talked through a lot of opportunities. We looked at renewables, we looked at traditional generation, we came up with a blended portfolio. Elements of that program we put together are retiring or converting our coal units, retiring aging uneconomical gas units, and then adding additional renewable generation. So with this plan in mind, we launched when you approved it in 2023, in January of that year. This is the plan at a glance. I know you'll recall seeing this document. It just basically lays out the additions and retirements that we've got there. Net is we're adding about 2,700 megawatts to our fleet as we transition some older units out, bring some new generation technology on board. I'm happy to report we're well ahead of schedule. We're at year 3 of an 8-year plan, and we're well over 50% of the new generation is serving us today or will be in short order. The details are indicated up there. I'll tell you what really helped us. We took an opportunity to look at the market and think a little bit differently about what we were seeking to achieve. We found an opportunity to purchase some existing natural gas assets not too far from here at a very good price. What that did was let us move well ahead of our plan and save a lot of money. When you look at what we planned on spending, about $1.8 billion, we spent significantly less than that. It's 56% savings we achieved to support our customers. At the same time, we brought those resources on today, where they're delivering value today. They're a big part of our fleet. The earnings, when you look at what they did last year, it was $230 million, round numbers, in wholesale revenue as a result of that purchase. So it has really paid dividends for us. Our commercial team has worked aggressively in the market through a bidding process to get solar and wind under contract. We're about 8% below our target. Again, saving money, accomplishing what we've been asked to do. So feeling pretty good about where we are. And of course, it doesn't stop there. We've got work in flight. Our South Texas nuclear project, we've got an additional 200 megawatts through a PPA we've secured, and we're adding another 2% to our position to give us an overall 42% stake in that plant. Community solar is in flight now with negotiations, and an additional wind capacity is working. We're also working to move forward to add additional peaking capacity. And finally, there's the Spruce 2 gas conversion moving forward. And of course, unit retirements. You're aware that the Browning unit retirements are moving forward this year, and we've been working with ERCOT to retain at least one of those units to support grid reliability. So that's in flight, and we've got a contract in place now. So this is our scorecard. Remember, all this started when we focused on cap reductions, carbon neutrality by 2050. Well, at the end of the day, when you look at our targets, we were shooting for a 41% reduction by 2030, 71% reduction by 2040. We're well ahead for 2030, and I believe we're on track for 2040 and beyond. Now, we're going to need some new technology to make that happen, but we believe it's out there. And the good news for us is we're experiencing significant growth in our area. Remember that 160 plus megawatts we have to add a year? Unlike some areas that are seeking to achieve this, we're not going to have to retire good, viable units to make that happen. So that's a real plus for us. Obviously, we've got headwinds to deal with in the market, but we've got tailwinds, and we're able to build on the inertia from those tailwinds that we've been able to achieve to help us push forward and accomplish our objectives, hopefully faster than anticipated. So with that, I'd like to say thank you and take any questions.
Mr. Steen?
Ms. Gonzalez, do you have any questions? You want to go first? Okay. So, Mr. Etheridge, thanks for your presentation today and for all you're doing and all you've done for CPS Energy. And you know I have high regard for you. I consider you an indispensable leader at CPS Energy. I'm going to direct my remarks primarily to our CEO, Mr. Garza. And so if you'd please put up slide 4. And that's the one entitled Our Community's Generation Plan, the Past Since 2022. And I just want to focus on that blue rectangle at the bottom. So it says Vision 2027 Generation Plan was approved by the Board of Trustees in January of 2023 with the City of San Antonio's Climate Action and Adaptation Plan CAP goals in mind. And Mr. Garza, you'll concur that your Vision 2027 plan and the CAP goals were established to align with goals set forth in the 2015 Paris Climate Accords. The 2015 Paris Agreement aspired to reduce the risk of climate change by eliminating greenhouse gas emissions in the latter half of this century. So fast forward a decade to today, and how has this played out? Well, it seems that the significant global emissions reductions envisioned in Paris are now widely acknowledged to be unattainable, or as some have put it, a fantasy. In fact, emissions grew to an all-time high in 2023 with the consumption of with the consumption of coal, oil, and gas, each near record levels, driven in large part by the needs of the developing world. So if you'd put up slide 9, please. And that's the one, achieving community goals CO2 intensity. And as Mr. Etheridge was pointing out, observe how the green line representing CO2 emissions intensity plummets to meet the 2030 CAP goal. But consider that a recent United Nations emissions report projects that worldwide emissions in 2030 will be twice as high as a level compatible with the Paris aspiration. And nationwide, despite generous subsidies, U.S. deployment of low-emission technologies won't meet these near-term goals, let alone the surge in electricity demand owing to data centers, artificial intelligence, electric vehicles, et cetera. And by the way, simultaneously, the scientific rationale for the transition is weakening as expectations of future warming are moderating. Now, let me give you an example of the kind of flexibility and adroitness we're seeing in other utilities around the country. Industry leaders rightly point out that there's been a delay, and I want to stress that word delay, in accelerated coal plant retirements based on grid stability and the energy needs arising from data centers and AI usage. Further, the new administration's plans to roll back regulations and policies around the coal industry give utilities the opportunity to keep their coal plants in operation longer. So here's a real-life example of how some utilities are responding, and it involves 120-year-old Duke Energy, one of our country's largest electric and gas utilities. In Indiana, Duke Energy has recently proposed extending the life of its Gibson generating station, and that's a 50-year-old plant that can burn enough coal to produce more than 3,300 megawatts of electricity. And they're extending the life until 2038, backtracking on that utility's previous plan to be coal-free by 2035. Or let's focus on Texas. According to the Global Energy Monitor, there are 25 active coal fuel units in Texas. Of the 25, 16 have no planned retirement, 4 have retirements as planned, 4 have retirements accelerated, and 1 has a retirement delayed or withdrawn. So it appears that out of the 25 active coal-fueled units in Texas, CPS Energy is among only 4 that have accelerated coal plant retirements. So CPS's current plan, the one we're discussing today, was adopted by this board on a 4-to-1 vote, January 23rd, 2023. With management's encouragement, this board ordered that the Spruce 1 coal plant be shut down by the end of 2028 and the Spruce 2 coal plant be converted to run on natural gas by 2027. But focusing on the planned closure of Spruce 1, let's recall it was placed in service in 1992 with the expectation that it would operate until at least 2047 and perhaps longer, that is until 2062. Thus, per this board's January 23rd, 2023 decision, it'll be shut down at least 20 years early, or if one posits a 70-year lifespan, 34 years early. So, Mr. Garza, last September, while participating on a North San Antonio Chamber panel, you stated the following, quote, "I know one truth about my customers in San Antonio. They care about reliability above all else, and they want it to be as affordable as it possibly can be, and then everything, all the good stuff, sustainability and decarbonization, and all those things they want to, they come after the first two are met," so close quote. And then at our meeting last time, as she presented her strategic framework for Horizon 2050, Chief Strategy Officer Elena Ball, after an extraordinary amount of community input, confirmed the same thing, that far and away the two things our customers want from CPS Energy are first, reliability, and second, affordability. Coming in a distant third is clean energy, which she defined as a balanced approach to reduce our environmental impact. So I wholeheartedly concur with Mr. Garza and Ms. Ball that the vast majority of our customers are predominantly interested in two things, reliability and affordability. So I'll conclude by reiterating why all of this is of the utmost importance, and please put up slide 7. And as Mr. Garza is wont to observe, there are basically only two ways for CPS Energy to pay for all these additional Vision 2027 expenditures. And we've got an example up there, the recent purchase of 4 old natural gas plants, 1 in Laredo and 3 in Corpus Christi, for $785 million. So the first way is by loading on more and more debt, and the second way is by increasing the base rate on CPS Energy's customers. In both instances, there are worrisome signs. As I've said often in regard to our debt, it currently stands at $8 billion and is expected to rise to $8.6 billion by the end of this fiscal year. 4 years ago, just 4 years ago, in fiscal 2022, CPS Energy's total debt was $5.89 billion. And so that means in 4 years, our total debt has grown by 46%. Last meeting, our CEO confirmed that the CPS Energy's debt capitalization ratio will rise to 64.7% this year, and is projecting that by fiscal year 2030 it will be at 69%, even with every 2-year rate hikes, specifically 5.5% in fiscal year 2027 and another 5.5% in fiscal year 2029 baked in. And of course, I've expressed at previous meetings about my concerns about being on a path to becoming over-leveraged. And then we're planning these every 2-year base rate increases. And we're doing that when for years 20%, or 1/5 of our residential customers have been in arrears. And I just ask, how much more can CPS Energy ask its already overburdened customers to bear? And as climate policy turns from distant, grandiose promises of future carbon cuts into the very real prospect of present-day rate hikes, what we're finding is utility customers across the country are asking whether it's worth it. So it begs the question, why is CP Energy planning to inflict a lot of hardship on itself and its customers to achieve climate goals we know cannot be met? Again, the goals of the 2015 Paris Agreement, which was the basis of all this, are now considered way out of reach, of fantasy. And just closing, I'll ask Mr. Garza 2 questions. In light of what I've outlined today, like Duke Energy, are we as a company, for the sake of our financial health and for the sake of our customers who struggle to pay their CPS Energy bills, willing to revisit and adjust our Vision 2027 generation plan, or are we inflexibly and unalterably locked into the resolution this board adopted January 23rd, 2023? And the second question, would you be amenable to surveying our customers to find out what they think about paying higher and higher rates for climate benefits that are negligible and distant, but whose costs are large and immediate? And thanks, that's all I have at this time. And Mr. Garza, may I have the courtesy of a response?
Well, my first response is, I think I could, by memory, repeat those talking points of yours given how often you use that script. Um, Look, I will follow the will of this board to the extent that they want to revisit the generation plan. Our city council sets cap goals. We've got nothing to do with that. You know, we give them information as they need and participate in their process by sending a representative as part of their, you know, sustainability committee's process. But, you know, ultimately, this board can determine to not follow, you know, our city owners, you know, policy or follow it. And if the city goes back and revisits cap goals for whatever reason, then, you know, then my recommendation to the board would be for us to revisit our generation plan to see what's changed. But ultimately, this board, at least a majority of this board, decides, you know, what direction to give me, which I will gladly do. You know, I think the process we followed was to ensure that we were meeting our obligations under a previously, you know, considered policy of the city. And if that policy changes, then we'll respond accordingly. And again, this board decides, you know, what direction to give me in that regard. That generation plan was a well thought out, balanced generation plan that I think when you add it all up, we are accomplishing what we set out to accomplish at a lower cost to our customers. That is a good story all day long. The mix, you know, my suggestion would be if the board did want to revisit that, for us to go back to the community and have another conversation, which we're talking about doing at the end of this year. We're going to look at our generation plan and look at the variables that went into it and decide if that generation plan still holds up. So I think the timing is right to do that. But again, I will follow whatever direction I am given by this board.
So if I made some comments, I think that's, you say, I repeat myself, and you say that, Mr. Garza, it's almost like you don't have any responsibility, it's whatever the board wants. But you're the CEO, you're paid very well and rightfully so for being the CEO. And so I think these kinds of problems are things that you should be looking at and communicating with us about. I don't think it's the right answer to say, I don't care, sort of. I'll just let the board decide what they want to do.
Trustee Steen, I didn't say that. What I said is, I feel like we went through an appropriate process to arrive at a well-thought-out generation plan, and that was a lot of hard work by the CPS Energy team. So I'm accountable for the update that we're giving you today says that we're on course, if not ahead of schedule, at a lower cost, and that is my accountability. Is to achieve the things this board is holding me accountable to, and our generation plan is one of those things.
I'm going to intervene here a moment. And Benny's looking like he's getting tired of standing up, so I'm going to give him some questions. Mr. Garza cannot bring Vision 2027 back again unless the board requests it. So I do want to, that is not his decision, it's ours. But I wanted to mention, I'm always looking at ERCOT. Right now, the state as a whole is operating on 62% wind and solar power and 7.3% coal power. So I don't believe we're out of step with anything. And I just noticed Reed Williams is here. Welcome, sir. Who led the community through the Vision 2027 generation plan. So Benny, I had a couple of questions for you. The ERCOT CDR, the report, which has some pretty ominous shortfalls, and I was reading it today. Clearly, I need to read it a couple more times. But one of the things they say at the beginning is that they're using a new methodology to determine that. And so, if you're familiar with it, or we can get to it at a later meeting, but it seemed like that it might be the methodology itself. I realize that we're growing and everybody has more demand, but it also seemed like the methodology itself might be impacting the direction of those numbers.
That's my understanding. I'm not prepared to go into detail on that one today, but I'll certainly follow up. But yes, there is a change, and it is changing the outcome a little bit.
Okay, so, I mean, I know it's something we absolutely have to pay attention to, but sometimes when people start measuring something differently, all of a sudden the world looks differently, but it's because you're measuring it differently.
Correct.
So I think it's not really that long of a report, it's just hard to get through.
What I would say about the report, Dr. Romero, is there's a lot of uncertainty about how much of the estimated large load capacity actually shows up. So ERCOT's trying to be probably overly cautious with kind of an all-in approach when there's a lot of pundits who will say, well, maybe not all of that is going to show up. And that's where you're going to get into the debate about the CDR is, whether it should be some percentage of the projects that are on the table or all of it.
And then also, I know when we did the Vision 2027 generation plan, there were just hints. I can't remember with the portfolio we ended up adopting if it even had anything for geothermal, hydrogen, or nuclear small reactors. So, but just from a real high level, because I know it's just been exponential growth, even though it's still pretty small and still pretty far away, which is like batteries were when I first started 3 years ago, everybody was talking about batteries like, oh, maybe someday. And I think this morning they were like 6% of the power source this morning. So, and I know that the Texas Tribune had done some really good conferences and reports on it. So just from your perspective, do you think each of those three might have a role in our generation plan as we update it maybe at the end of this year?
We absolutely support an all-in philosophy. We spent significant money evaluating geothermal opportunities for us here in San Antonio. What we found is it's a pretty good investment. There's risk involved in that investment, and the payoff is relatively small during the summer period when we need the energy the most. So we focused more on those things that are a faster return for our money that we can get scale with. Do I think there's more out there? Absolutely. We're working with a couple of different vendors today that have alternative storage technologies they're pushing forward, give us longer scale, larger duration. We have visited plants that produce modular nuclear, and then the small modular, they call it, and then there's the microreactors. So we're digging into that. In fact, we have another trip here early in March. So we're continuing to dig in there, and we do see that as a real growth opportunity. There's some companies emerging in the market that are starting to take more of a leadership role. And you may have seen the announcement where Constellation is starting a site permitting process in the Northeast, right? And so we've got our South Texas project where we partner with them. I truly think nuclear is probably best positioned for the long term to achieve our ultimate goal. I think we're going to need it. But until then, gas is much cleaner, and that's how we're getting a lot of our benefit. So we're focusing on bang for the buck right now because of this rapid growth. We've also talked about some different options we need to consider here in San Antonio around our existing equipment. Recall the economics have changed in the market when we first looked at our older gas units and found that the economics of refurbishment were just not there in the market. Well, some of that's maybe changing. So that's an option that's on the table for us too. But under Rudy's leadership, we've maintained an all-in focus, and we intend to continue that.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments?
It's just a comment. I think it kind of goes back where our chairman is correct. The plan is fluid. Political winds will change. We'll have a new mayor in a couple of months. Who knows where that goes? Again, we kind of go back to this is a democracy. This has been a process. We've talked about for the last couple of years that the way technology is evolving as well as political landscapes are evolving, that the plan must be agile. I don't think anybody is stuck here. It is to be set in stone. I think that, again, I want to emphasize a lot of work went into RAC. If we were stubborn and we only wanted one way, we wouldn't have had so many generation mix. A lot of discussion in both Vision 2027 and Vision 2025 has been to remain open. And being open means that if there's a mandate at a federal level, at a state level, then, our city's going to have to make a decision in what we as a board will end up changing. At this moment, I hear my colleagues both loud and clear. I think we need to balance our portfolio and be very mindful that there's a lot of things that are involving. There's even a conflict in priorities between the federal administration. You have one way going the other, and then someone who's advising wanting to go all renewables. So I think at the end of the day, we got to just be mindful that there's competing opinions. The costs are rising. You take out the cost, even though CPS is one of the most affordable when you compare us in the United States. What number are we? We're the lowest in Texas, but at a national level. Okay, look at the price of eggs. Okay, that's a prime example that no one today would be trying to buy their own chickens, right? I'm being facetious here, but they are, because eggs, we didn't expect that headwind 2 years ago. Things are going to happen. Right now, our country, our state, our city is in transition. What I love about our plan and what I love about my colleagues is that we all have a passion, we have an opinion, but we will be mindful in making critical decisions based on research, survey, politics, technology advancements. I mean, the pulse of everything. We don't just sit here and just decide to make a decision without taking those things into consideration. So I'm very grateful that my colleague, Mr. Steen, brings that up, and I'm very grateful that we have someone who's very, pretty good expert on what my chairman believes in, and then I'm just going to keep it kind of level-headed and balance it all out and make the best decisions that I can with my colleagues and the citizens and our council.
All right, well, this was an item for discussion, which we did.
Madam Chair, can I?
Yes, Mr. Steen.
So, Mr. Garza, I asked you a question about doing a survey, and I've thought about it that we're in communication through billing with all of our customers every month. And it seems to me that we could get help, outside help, to make sure the questions are answered fairly, but we could actually ask our customers what they think about these things. Would you be willing to do that?
We survey our customers in all kinds of ways, Trustee Steen. We'll take a look at the surveys that we do and make sure that we're getting appropriate feedback. But we're going to continue asking customers what they think about Horizon 50 and to give us feedback on what their priorities are. Customers, in the pursuit of reliability, customers will pay what it takes to keep our system reliable. That we know. And if that's a little more, then that's a little more. But we're trying to give it to them at the lowest cost, possible. But yes, I mean, every year we have a plan to reach out and survey our customers, and we'll continue to make sure we're digging into this issue.
Well, I think that the issues you say I keep bringing up, I think if we could take it to the customers, maybe I don't know if this could be done, but maybe you could give them some kind of financial incentive for responding to the survey.
Yeah, we can't do that. Yeah.
You can't do
We
that?
do.
Yes, sir. So two things. One, I heard you mention the bill. In the past, especially with the GEN plan, we did put a link to our survey on our bill, as well as in the email that we send, since the majority of our customers do get their bill via email. On top of that, the third-party escalant that we use does offer different incentives for customers to complete our survey, especially since a lot of times we're asking customers to stay on the phone between 20 to 25 minutes. So it is a nominal amount, but I don't remember, and I can follow up with that. And we have seen that sometimes that helps and other times it doesn't. It's usually about the time commitment and if the customer is available to speak with us. But we can give you that information later on.
Thank you, Ms. Hardwick. But you all said, so it's not illegal. You were saying
No.
it's illegal.
Yeah.
Okay, again, I'm going to intervene here a moment. This is certainly something we can think about, but I believe for Horizon 2050, we have done a lot of public polling. I know because I have my students do it, and we did get feedback on that. And I also just want to be clear for people listening in, it is not, we cannot just say, if only we could keep the coal plant open, we could keep our rates down. There are expenses to keeping that coal plant open, which we have talked about, and there are savings to the direction we are going with Vision 2027. So this has simply been an update for discussion. I know we will have more. And perhaps we can get some clarification on how we poll our customers on a continuing basis. But I know last time Ms. Ball talked to us about the feedback that we had gotten for that, and that drove your final version of it. And we welcome Vice Chair Dr. Mackey. Thank you. All right, so we are moving on. We are moving back to item 12, and Mr. Steen will be recusing for this item and leaving the dais, and we will get him when we are done for our final item.
Good afternoon. My name is Elena Ball, and I'll be speaking with you about a procurement request for independent verification and validation services tied to our Evolve ERP transformation project. Today's agenda, first, we'll do a quick overview of our enterprise resource planning risk management program, discuss the benefits of IV&V, outline our IV&V partner selection, and then respectfully request for approval of our selection. This has a lot of words on it, but in general, wanted to convey to you all that risk management around the very large ERP project that we have embarked on is really critical to the success of the project. You know, common risks that emerge in these large projects include, you know, ensuring we have clarity of roles and responsibilities. Change management in the organization is going to be key, as well as how we govern our data and manage security and controls. And so risk management is actually a key component of our ERP project. We have a risk management subcommittee and process that's really focused on ensuring that risks are identified early, they're assessed, mitigated, and monitored, and ultimately that we have a clear line of sight to the steering committee about risks associated with the program. Some of the benefits associated with having an IV&V provider are listed on this slide. You know, I think most importantly, it really is about proactive risk identification and mitigation. We want to, as early on in the project, identify points of unclearness, of risk, of items that ultimately could create rework or functionality that's less desirable later on in the program. The earlier you identify risks and can resolve them, the lower cost and the higher likelihood of success and high quality in your program. It also decreases the chance of these risks becoming significant issues. So the IV&V partner will be reporting to this risk subcommittee. It's going to be independent of the transformation team. However, we're going to have a high degree of collaboration across the ERP project team and our technology and implementation partners. The intent is to promote continuous improvement and accountability through ongoing review, reporting, and communication. So this is a graphic that our CIO has shared with you all. This is our ecosystem for the ERP program. Our technology partner, of whom we've already selected, that being Oracle, is the foundation of the systems that we're going to be replacing, not only our existing ERP, but a number of other systems in this transformation. Last meeting, you all approved an implementation partner, and we also have a strategic change management partner in place. The procurement that's in front of you today is for that independent validation and verification partner. You can think of this as an independent set of eyes and ears on the project for the leadership team, for the steering committee, ultimately to identify risks as early as possible. And then there will, as the project moves forward, be other ancillary services, other types of technology providers to help with, you know, specific configurations, specific types of technology and interfaces, and we'll be onboarding those as needed. So the IV&V partner is a critical component of this transformation process. So my team, over the last several months, embarked on a process to select an IV&V partner. Over 50 suppliers were solicited. We received 6 detailed proposals, shortlisted 2 firms, and have 1 preferred provider in front of you today. The RFP included both cloud and ERP implementation IV&V experience. We also sought change management experience, and a commitment to subcontract to a smaller local business. In fact, the selected provider has identified a local business and will be subcontracting for 10% of the work. We do have a combination of onshore and hybrid with the ability of us to be able to flex as needed. So with that, we respectfully request your approval to proceed with IV&V partner selection up to $20 million in value. We're aligning the term of the engagement with the ERP implementation, which right now sits at about 36 months, and the funds will be used to support the ERP transformation program. I'll answer any questions that you all have.
Any questions?
They have a low score at 73. Why are we gonna consider, I'm just kidding. Just saying, like, we're back to scores. No, I do have a question more for legal. When does, like, did any of the trustees know ahead of time when the RFP went out and who responded? Was any of that posted, or we just post when it's about to go for approval? I'm trying to understand the sequence. So oftentimes, the way that it works is sometimes through committee meetings, we're briefed ahead, right? And I'm asking the question, was this briefed to every trustee before it was published that we were going to vote on it?
Yes, we did offer information along with the ERP SI. We discussed IV.
When was that date?
Well, we met individually with trustees, and the IV&V program has been part of the ERP program for over 2 years and has been included in all of the briefings associated.
I guess my question is, from an ethics perspective, when should a trustee not participate in conversations prior to being posted for award is my question.
I believe that the information that raised the voluntary recusal was not available until the selection was made, so that the all alerts to both the chair and to
Well,
myself.
I'm just
about
asking the
potential
question because
conflict.
the name is not unique. It's not the first time that name has been brought up. So I guess my question is, as trustees, when do we recuse ourselves? When it's being pitched to us?
I don't believe that our
Usually in
process allows
procurement,
us
we
to
say,
pitch
here are the
anything to
companies.
y'all except for
Here
approval of
are
our
the
contract.
companies. I'm just saying, like, I've known of companies before we actually come, we know, we ask those questions. That information usually is provided to us during committees.
Well, just to be very clear, I don't think that the information about who we are going to select is provided until after the selection process. is
Right, but
complete.
during what I'm saying is that if I could be wrong, and I'm also, like, taking antihistamines and everything else, but the way the process works is that we're presented procurement items before they go for the board for approval. In that procurement process, we're provided names of who submitted, who made the qualifications. So my question is, if that is the case, when do we as trustees recuse ourselves? As soon as we find out that we're still, these were the 10 proposals we got and 3 of them made the final, or do we do it at a voting?
Again, I think that attempting to give you guys guidance on when you should recuse yourself using a single example is a little bit difficult because every instance is fact specific. When you have information that is made available to you that you feel might cause yourself to need to voluntarily recuse yourself or to be mandated to recuse yourself are 2 different buckets. And as soon as you have the information that leads you to that conclusion is when you should do it.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Mackey, any questions? Okay, let me ask you a question, Ms. Ball. So this came before Operations Oversight Committee?
Yes, as part of ERP. We did not discuss the specific selection because we had not made it at that time.
Did it go through any other committees? I cannot recall.
TNR, I believe, as well.
Okay.
It went through 3NR, that's why I know.
The
TNR,
Technology Committee.
I've never seen this.
Yes, you have.
Technology?
And IV&V as a body of work has been contemplated since the inception of the,
well, because
ma'am.
it's been ongoing for 2 years. It was risk. I'm sorry, it was risk. You were there at risk. I'm good. I've been ready.
Okay, Dr. Mackey, any questions or? Can we just get a confirmation on that? We'll consider this a question. Was this brought before Risk Management Committee?
We did talk about it during Risk Management Committee, but we did not have the specific selection at that time. But it- Correct. I don't think we talked about that. I don't believe, we can confirm whether we discussed respondents. I don't recall, and I'm hearing others don't believe that we did. But we did talk about it as a body of work.
Well, let me ask you this, Ms. Ball. What would be the consequences if we put this on hold until our next meeting, just to get this out of the way?
Certainly, we can do that. What we are trying to do is align the work of the IVNV with the SI, which was awarded last month, so that they can begin their QA/QC oversight function alongside the project team and not have a long delay. But we certainly could do that. It'll introduce some period of time when we're in global design that the IVNV won't be on board.
What I would recommend, because I don't want to hold this up, I'm big on not holding things up when we're trying to stay on schedule. What I would like my chairwoman to entertain is that I will vote for it, in favor of it. If we look into, I still think we need to kind of flesh out, and we got to be consistent. We can't have one meeting where we say, here are all the vendors, and then on another meeting, not disclose vendors to prevent a potential ethics issue. So what I'm recommending is that we kind of just investigate a little bit and be a little bit more clear about when we as trustees should recuse ourselves. If we automatically already hear a name and we know and there's a potential, it's up to us. And that's what the law says. But I just want to make sure that we're clear on that. But I'm not going to delay it, Dr. Romero, unless you want to.
Well, there's two separate issues here. There's recusals, and I don't want to be discussing individual recusals here. Maybe someone should recuse earlier in the process when a name is brought before them, but all the law can ask is that when you know that you have a conflict of interest, that you recuse. I'm not going to question when somebody knows they have a conflict of interest. The most important point to have that recusal is when you actually vote, and this is our actual vote. So that's one issue. I'm happy with that. Now, for this issue, I had been under the impression that several of the committees had been briefed, but now I am not sure if the committees that Dr. Mackey serves on had been briefed on this item. And so if we need to hold it, or that the trustees would be reached out to see if they wanted a separate briefing. So
The IVNV process, as well as the selection process, was briefed at the Technology and Resiliency, Ops Oversight Committee, and Risk Management, which includes all trustees in the combination of that group. Each trustee was also offered a one-on-one to review this as well. The unknown is simply whether the final selection had been made when those presentations were made. To me, that does not matter. For the specific issue you're raising, I know you think it matters. What I'm saying is, with respect to the second issue of when each committee was briefed, I think that the point is, have we given trustees sufficient information about the contract that we're seeking to fill, why it's being filled, and how it's being filled? I believe that was done here.
okay.
And the IVNV contract has always been part of our governance process because the board has asked us to make sure that we have an independent voice in the process overseeing what's happening, so that they're not, so that we have so that we can report to the board that we're following our governance process and the work is getting done in the manner in which we've suggested. So the IVNV contract has always been part of our governance model from the get-go.
Yes, I realize that. I'm still just want to make sure that all trustees feel they have been fully briefed.
Let me ask a question. Is Evan here? Who was supposed to have briefed me on that? I'm just trying to figure it out. Evans, is he here?
He's traveling today, but we do have a team member from EIT.
I just want to know if he visited with me about this. I want to know when. If individually, I was just going to ask him. Maybe I'm just a little confused or lost on it. I just wanted to know when. Because I don't remember this one right here discussed. Briefly, I think I've heard the name Gardner, but I don't remember him talking about this. So I just want him to refresh my memory on this.
And to be
And-
clear, sir, at the briefings were not about who was selected. That has to be done in an open meeting. If I walk around telling you all who we're recommending is selected before that, I could create a walking quorum, so I definitely don't do that.
No, that's not what I'm talking about. This item, I just want to know, not who received it. When was I briefed on it? I don't know. That's all I was asking. When was I briefed on this
We'll
right
pull
here?
the dates for those committee
Evans, that's
meetings
why I
where it was
was
briefed.
asking for Evans on this.
Dr. Mackey, I don't think Evan did any briefings outside of the last briefing he gave y'all before we made the implementation partner, choice. We haven't done a briefing since then.
Okay.
The implementation partner choice was the last individual briefings we gave to the board members outside of the risk committee, which we've already discussed.
Okay. My question is this right here. And usually I'm on top of this right here, and I know Trustee Gonzalez is on top of it, and I support her commitment to this, but I'd like to know, just kind of refreshing me on this, Ms. Paul,
Yes, sir.
that this company that we're selecting for $20 million with the ERP system is between the company and CPS Energy to brief us if there's what?
Yes, sir, you're thinking about it correctly. We are hiring this company to be an independent reviewer on behalf of management for the technical documents associated with the project, the deliverables that we're receiving, as well as all of the artifacts of the project, from charters to meeting materials, to presentations, to the actual functionality of the system. They're going to work on behalf of management through the risk subcommittee to be our eyes and ears on the project and raise up risks, both to the project team, the steering committee, and the risk management committee as they occur. They're effectively our QA/QC.
Okay. Is there any time during this process that they brief us? This committee, is there a certain committee, or is it to the board that gets briefed on their findings and things like this with the ERP system?
They do report directly to the risk subcommittee, but they
Which subcommittee?
the risk subcommittee of the project, but they serve at the pleasure of CPS Energy. We can request and have them come to brief the board. The intent is for that independence.
So whenever we have our risk management meeting as a full board, then we can ask for that briefing.
Absolutely.
All right, then I think we are ready for a motion on this item.
Motion to approve the contract partner for critical component of the ERP transformation ecosystem.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any final discussion? Ms. Ramirez, vote please.
Vice Chair Dr. Mackey?
Okay.
Trustee Gonzalez? Chair?
Yes,
Motion carries.
not used to that yet. Could somebody get Mr. Steen back in, please? All right, we're on item 14, board committee assignments, and I think,
No, we're gonna go, she said it's gonna be fast.
well, doesn't have to be, but, so these are our new board committee assignments. Our rules require this to be approved by the board. So this is something we will actually be voting on. So are there any, I think you have all seen this.
I move. Approve it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval of board committee assignments. Are there any discussions? All right, Ms. Ramirez?
Vice Chair Dr. Mackey? Yes. Trustee Steen?
Yes.
Trustee Gonzalez?
Sorry, Romero. Let me see, let me look again real quick. Is it?
We've already started voting.
Then it's no.
Discussion.
Chair?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you. Ms. Ramirez, will you please take the board into executive session?
Yes, ma'am, and I will note that in executive session, item 15E will be deferred to a future meeting. At this time, the board is going to recess into executive session and discuss matters that have been duly posted under several provisions of Chapter 551 of the Texas Government Code, including consultation concerning attorney-client matters under Section 551.071, personnel matters under Section 551.074, security personnel or devices under Section 551.076, to deliberate regarding security audits and devices under Section 551.089, to deliberate under Texas Government Code Section 418.183, subsection F, about confidential information under the Texas Homeland Security Act, and to deliberate, vote, or take final action on competitive matters under Section 551.086. At the conclusion of executive session, the board will reconvene in open session and continue the meeting. It's 3:40 p.m.
Ms. Ramirez, can you bring the board back from executive session?
Yes, ma'am. It is 4:42 PM and the board has concluded executive session. I can confirm that there were no votes taken and no matters were discussed that were not part of the posted agenda. We have a quorum. Everyone except for the mayor is present.
All right, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second? I'll second. All in favor? Aye. All right, we are adjourned. Thank you all.